International Week 6 of Learning with Miss Jones. Today's topic is all about population dynamics, how our populations can increase and decrease depending on various things. So, let's get right into it. When we look at increase in a population, it's based on the following factors, such as our food availability and supply, water, territory and how much space we have, an increased birth rate, and that also means a decreased death rate. That could also mean a decreased number of predators as well. When we look at decreasing the population, we look at these following factors instead, which is pretty much the opposite of what I just told you. That means there's a lack of resources or competition somewhere. It also means there could be disease in a population. Unfortunately, kind of like the disease we have going on right now. A decreased birth rate and also decreased breeding, an increased death rate, increased number of predators, something along those lines. Natural disasters such as fire, flood, and drought. All of those can play a part in decreasing a population size. You can see all of this trending when we talk about an increase in population size and a decreased population size. A lot of these factors are the same when we talk about disease, resources, courtship and mating, and also the number of organisms in general. And all of this leads me to talking about our carrying capacity. Now, our carrying capacity is the max number of organisms that the environment can support. Different populations and different species have different carrying capacities. It all depends on where they live. The woods at Lake Benson can only hold so many deer. At the SPCA, there's only so many dogs and cats they can take in before they have to turn them away. That's a carrying capacity. Now, as for humans, we have not yet reached our carrying capacity. We don't actually know how many this Earth can hold. We know that we're getting close, and we've talked about populations before since the Industrial Revolution. But I'll get to that later. When we look at our carrying capacity, there are limiting factors that play along with it. And there are two types of limiting factors we're going to talk about today. The first are density-dependent limiting factors. Now, these factors limit the size of a population based on the number of organisms in an area. So water, food, territory and space, and disease, all that plays a part into it. Depending on how much water there is, depends on how many organisms can survive. Same thing can be said about food. And as far as space goes, in a certain size area, only so many members can actually live there before it becomes overpopulated. Then they can't forage for enough food that they need. On the flip side, we have density-independent limiting factors. Now, this limits the size of a population, irregardless of how many are in the area. This is when we talk about natural disasters and climate. The Earth doesn't care how many are living there, a natural disaster is still going to take place. So things such as a drought may occur, regardless of what lives there. So therefore, all those organisms will suffer from it. Or a forest fire, or a hurricane, or whatever else it may possibly be, Mother Nature is going to take its course. I know these movies are kind of old now, but I hope you've seen The Hunger Games, because this is where I used that example of Katniss in the first movie, where she's just hanging out in a tree, then all of a sudden, pew! These fireballs get slung at her. That's an example of density independent as well. Even though they were trying to kill her, but just go watch the movie. They're great. So scientists have seen situations when what happens if our carrying capacity reaches its limit and goes over. If the amount of organisms goes over how much we can actually support, the following things are going to happen. Your resources have to decrease. We don't have enough for everybody. Your competition increases. They're going to be fighting like tooth and nail trying to get some food. And ultimately, organisms have to die. We can't stay at our carrying capacity too long before we come back down underneath it. It simply means there are too many in the environment and the death rate has to increase. Can the max number go over the carrying capacity? Yes, but only for a limited amount of time before it has to come back down because the environment can only support so many. Now, if the number of organisms is less than the carrying capacity, that means the following factors can take place. There's room for more, so our birth rate can increase. It also means there's plenty of food and resources to go around for everybody, so there's nothing to worry about if it's under the carrying capacity. We typically look at two population growth curves, the J curve and the S curve. Pretty original names, aren't they? But the J curve is showing us unrestricted exponential growth. At that point, there is no carrying capacity yet. And it appears the population growth can continue forever because there's unlimited resources. At least at the time. On the flip side, we have an S curve. That's showing us logistic or restricted growth. The population growth starts off kind of slow, and then it speeds up like a J curve would, but then it hits its carrying capacity and levels back off. We've used the phrase dynamic equilibrium before when we talk about isotonic solutions and things moving inside and outside of an egg cell, or any cell for that matter. What goes in must come out. So things are still moving, but it's staying the same size. The same thing can be said about populations. Though their birth rate and death rates may change, the population overall is still maintained at the same size. Now for humans right now, it looks like we have a J curve. Our population can just keep on increasing forever and ever. and the J started really happening during the Industrial Revolution. Currently, we have no carrying capacity. One day we're going to, but that's thanks to all the advances in medicine and technology. I wish they hurried up with the vaccine though. So though we haven't reached our carrying capacity, it still looks like we have an unlimited number of resources. But have you seen some of the shelves at the grocery store lately? And we can just keep growing and growing and growing. Eventually, we're gonna hit that carrying capacity, whenever that may be. May not be in our lifetime, maybe in a future lifetime, but you have to understand that our population keeps increasing at an exponential rate. Therefore, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Keep in mind that humans do have a significant impact on the environment, and things are constantly changing right now. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week in week 7 of our virtual learning. I think this lesson has been pretty significant, especially for the times that we're facing right now. I know it's getting old, but I hope you guys are staying strong and hanging in there. We're going to get through it soon, just a matter of time. I'm looking forward to that time, guys. So I wish you all the best. I hope you're doing well. Of course, reach out to me if you have any questions at all. Make sure you're checking Power Schools, doing your makeup work, everything else. Other than that, guys, hope you have a great rest of your week. I'm out.